This is Bruce Smollicombe, Alice, and Dale Kecklack at the German Historical Society. It's August 16th, 2018, and we're going to interview Charlie Battenberg for the history of German and what he remembers of the history of German.
There's not many around older than me.
A couple, and that's it. Well, we always start out with a little bit about your family history. I know your father's name was Floyd.
Yeah.
I don't remember your mother's name.
Margaret.
Margaret, and your grandparents were.
Yeah, they came from Andrew. My
Andrew?
grandfather. His grandmother was Rose.
Rose, and they came right from Germany.
Well, my grandmother was born in Archibald.
Oh,
my
okay.
grandfather came when he was 14 years old. He got immigrated, and then he learned the cabinet business. And he had a twin brother who was here as an invalid, so he started a furniture business and funeral home. My grandfather had worked for him, and then when he died in the 90s, my grandfather bought the business from him. And there ever since, 1881. 81 when it started.
You started in 1881. Well, that's a lot of history. Do you remember? Did they tell you any stories about your great grandparents, or?
No, they didn't ever came over here.
Yeah. I didn't know if you heard any stories of that.
Not really. I didn't realize it was a big family. There was about 12 or 14 of them. About 5 or 6 of them came. His brother was a captain in the Civil War over here. That's where I think he got to hear the section.
Oh, okay. And you were born in German?
It's Carbondale
Hospital, but your family lived in German the whole time.
Yeah.
You went to school in German?
Right.
Grade school right here in the German grade school.
Graduated 1948, 70 years ago.
48. What do you remember about growing up in German? I mean, when you were growing up, I'm sure they had running water and they had toilets.
Oh yeah. Well, there were some outhouses around.
There's still some outhouses. And where did you live? Up on Lincoln Avenue?
When we first got married, until I was about 2 years old, we lived on Lincoln Avenue. And then he bought the place down there I am now. The funeral home was up next to the store, my grandfather's place, where Avery's is.
Where Avery's flower shop is.
And then Dad bought that. And then when my grandmother died in '39, he moved. Of course, Charlie's wife was my aunt, my father's sister, so she got the house. And Charlie and Dad had a place. But in those days, I remember my mother telling me my grandfather died in '34, and my grandmother in 1939. My mother told me they had 2 funerals there in the 5 years. And they were both people that didn't have anything. Everybody had their own third funeral home in those days.
Yeah. So going to school, you went to school in German at the elementary school.
In the high school.
What did you do as a kid? I mean, what did you guys do as kids in town? What was there to do?
Oh, there was lots to do. A lot more than now. In fact, when we were in high school, there were three ice cream parlors, 2 pool rooms, and Jim Meehan's restaurant with 6 places to hang out. And there was always a gang in town.
How about when you were younger, though, like in grade school? Do you have any parks to go to, or the playgrounds?
Oh no, well, we made our own parks. We had a lot of fields. Well, the Crawford's Field was up there with it.
Yeah.
And then where the Bell Telephone is, they used to call the park. We used to play ball there.
Where the old bell tower is, and where the one is now, out by Hodges' house.
The Lions Club sold that to the telephone company.
Oh, okay.
And they built the building. They finished that. And Fowler's Field was up there too. But we didn't go there too often in Florida.
How about your first car? Do you remember your first car?
Well, we always had Dad bought a convertible in 1947, so I used that. We used it for funerals, for flowers. But I didn't really buy a car till I got out of the service. I had an allotment while I was in the service, and I come out of here and buy a car.
Yeah.
A 54 Chevy.
54 Chevy. And your father had just cars for the business. He didn't have a personal car.
No, we used the car.
Used the same one.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about the grandparents and stuff like that. And we didn't have anything on there. And your childhood, as a child, you lived on Lincoln.
Until I was 2 years old.
And then you moved down to Washington Avenue.
And there was always a gang of kids around. was all Irish kids. Billy Badger and I were the only Protestants in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we talked about that with a couple of interviews about how the Protestants all lived here, and the Irish lived Gibson Street down that way.
They had the Egans and the Spicers and the Callahans.
And then the Italians lived on Madison.
Well, there weren't too many Italians.
Closer
There weren't too many Italians.
But they lived on Madison, closer to the Catholic Church.
Well, Rotels lived on Madison.
The Esgros, the Italians.
Esgros lived next to 2 doors down from us, and they moved from Hartsville. I was about 9 years old when they moved in town.
Did you travel a lot when you were a kid? Did you get to go?
Not when I was a kid. I didn't. My grandmother and grandfather lived down in Jersey City. My mother's parents. We used to go down there on the train a couple times a year. Yeah.
Did they have candy stores that you'd go to as a kid?
In town, yeah. Well, when I was real young, Dick Marion's father had a store out where where Kennedy's is now. They tore it down in the Tyson's building. Dick Marion's father had a candy store on one side and Gerald Bruce had a barber shop on the other. And
barber shop, the candy store.
We used to go to the movie on Friday nights. I always had to see the chapter in the cereal. And we'd always stop there for a penny's worth of candy. You get a lot of candy for a penny in those days. And the movie was 10 cents. So if you had 12 cents, you were pretty well off.
Well, that's what Gail talked about. He said he used to get, he said, you got a quarter? If you got a quarter, he'd go to a movie and he'd go have ice cream and he had money for candy. And,
yeah. Gail was out of town for quite a few years.
Yeah. And then high school, you went to the same high school that's here now, German high school, and graduated.
Where the Borough Building is.
Yeah, where the Borough Building is.
The high school and grade school burned down.
Yeah. And how about sports in school? Was there a lot of
all we had was basketball. When we were seniors, they had baseball. Well, football, when I was younger, they had a high school team up until maybe 43 or 44.
And then they did away with
kids
football.
There weren't enough kids, boys.
Wasn't enough boys.
German and Mayfield used to have a game every Thanksgiving in Flanders Field.
Yeah. And where did you go to the movies?
German. They had a movie there next to where the Windsor is now.
Yeah. Was that the only one when you were a kid?
Only one in Mayfield.
Okay.
Carbondale, my father go to Irving.
You remember the trolleys running up and down?
No, I don't. But I remember when the buses started. Yeah, it was about that time. I think.
You're not old enough for stagecoaches, then.
No, not quite.
You have coal stoves back then?
Yeah, we had an electric stove. Most people had coal stoves. In fact, most people had heaters in each room they used the coal stove for the kitchen, and then they had a stove in the next room, and then had vents in the ceiling.
Yeah, that's what my grandmother did.
Yeah, well, they were pretty common.
Yeah.
Had a hand-fired furnace.
You guys were lucky and had was there kerosene lamps still around when you were a kid?
No, I was later than that. I don't think you'll find anybody around.
Okay. I didn't know if people still...
The miners used them. I remember miners used them.
They were still using them in some of the poorer families or anything that didn't have electricity.
Everybody had electricity in the 30s.
Okay. How about farms and stuff? Were there still any farms around?
Oh, up the country, they're all farmers, yeah. Different farmers, but Leon Taylor up there used to come down every summer. Even when I lived on Lincoln Avenue, after they got married,
There was no farms left in the valley part, though. It was all up in the country.
No, I don't think it was all mining. The valley was all
all
mining.
mining.
It might have been a couple small farms.
Well, what we hear is that there was more bars than there were anything else in Germany.
There were a lot of food. There were a lot of businesses in town. Hank Hockley told me once he was in the one winter he figured out how many businesses were in town, and it was 100.
100?
Well, every corner had a corner store. The husband worked in the mines, and the wife would take care of the.
Yeah, I remember Alvin Young's and Rudolph's.
Oh, yeah. This was going back further. Emmett Dempsey and Herbie Davis's father had one.
There was a meat market somewhere down here on Main Street.
Well, let's see.
The next block down.
Kenneth Watney had one.
Well, yeah, further down by us, the Kenneth went before Kenneth. Well, Kennedy's had a grocery store where just built a home there. Tough time with names.
Where Nick Mattice used to live?
No, down we're down just the corner this side of Donnie Ergoski.
Oh, okay.
Like on
Okay,
in
well,
there.
Don's Market was there for a while.
Well, that was up further. The Kennedys was at the right there where she has that house now.
Oh,
And
and.
I couldn't think of it. And
Oh, okay.
there was a business there. Kennedys had one in the early 30s.
She
I
was
could
in
just
mostly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew her, but I couldn't
Yeah.
think of her name. But he had a store there, and he died, I guess, and then Joe McGovern opened up there, and he had it there for a little while, and then he lived down where Donnie Ergoski lives now, and he had a store. Donnie moved it down there. No, Joe moved it down there, and then Donnie moved it late, bought it later. And next to was the one Tizzoni's had one next door to him.
Tizzoni's?
Tizzoni.
Olivia's.
Olivia's.
Oh, Olivia's, okay. Mundley's had a law office in Germany.
Yeah, that was later.
That was later
Yeah,
on.
because Bob was about my age, so he had it up there. Let's see, there was a double house. The Pudas had a barber shop on one side. Well, later, first, Francis Lynn had a electrical store, repair shop there. And then later, what's the name?
I remember a lot of businesses even when I was a kid. I mean, there was 2 shoe stores, and
Oh,
there was
yeah.
Taylor's, and there was Alvin Young's Market, and there was also, Betty's Candy Store, and Josephine's Candy Store,
It came later, yeah.
But they say that German was one of the busiest towns for business.
It was the best business town. Only one bigger was in Oliphant, I think. In fact, they had a bus running from, besides the county bus, they had a bus running from German to Carbondale every day. In between, I mean, it was running every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
1/2 hour to that county bus is running. And then when it was down at Rippon's, or Doc Rippon, or Squire Rippon's corner. It started there and it went to Carbondale and came back every hour or so.
What do you remember most about high school? It's like dances and...
Oh yeah, they had Teen Town then when we were kids. They had proms every year, snow frolics at Christmas time.
And then, did you go in the service?
Yeah, when I got out of high school, I went to embalming school down in Philadelphia for 2 years. And when I got out, the Korean War started, so I joined the Air Force. And I was in for 4 years. I spent 3 years in England. I got the guy who enlisted. I said, yeah. He said, you get the basic training, then you go home, then you go to somewhere to school, and then you go to station somewhere in the States. And Bobby Beswick was a friend of mine. He was in the service. Yeah, he said, I come home every weekend. So anyway, I got through basic, and they sent me to supply school in Denver, Laurie's Bearbase. And from there, we went overseas to England I was there for 3 years. When I come back, I had 3 years left, 6 months left, so I went to Colorado Springs. But I was only over there about 6 months, and my mother wrote and said, Bobby Beswick got discharged.
But you didn't get to see Korea, though.
No, fortunately, the Army knew the government knew what they were doing. The war was in Korea, so they sent me to England.
They wanted to win, huh?
Yeah.
What did you like about England?
I enjoyed it over there. I didn't like going over there in the beginning, but then I enjoyed it over there. Well, see, what happened at that time, the war was in Korea, and Stalin was threatening to go into Germany. But Truman said, we had boatloads of us. Well, they had abandoned all the bases during the war. So we went over to England to rebuild the bases. Boatloads of Air Force to England and boatloads of Army to Germany. So then they backed out. Stalin backed out, and he died a short later.
And then you came back here and
Went into business.
When did you get married?
I got out in December of '54. I got married in September of '55.
Okay.
But I went with her before I went to service.
Did she go to school with you?
No, she was from Marchville.
Oh, okay.
But lucky enough, she waited. I mean, she didn't wait. She was going out while I was going out, but we didn't write for about a year and a half. And I sent her a Christmas card. I always used to kid her. I said, if I didn't send her that Christmas card, I'd be all right.
And what was her maiden name?
Claire's.
What is it?
Claire's, Callejas. Her nephew was basketball coach down there in Scranton, Al Claire's.
Al Claire's, yeah. Okay.
His father was a brother to my wife.
Okay.
They're all still in Archibald.
Yeah, they are.
Did she talk about her family growing up and where she lived? And
Well, she lived there most of her life at this, at the third bridges at Harrison's there. You just go over at the corner, across the bridge, the corner of Monroe Avenue.
okay.
It was 2.5 miles from my house to hers. And I met her, she worked in Russell's Ice Cream Parlor when I got out of the service.
Up here in
Yeah. I always tell her I used to went in for a milkshake and met her, and I haven't had a milkshake since.
That's where you met her? You met her at the
Yeah,
place?
I went in for a milkshake, and she was there. I didn't get to go with her right away, but in a couple of months.
Huh.
And then you went to church here, of course.
I always went to church here.
Yeah, did you have Sunday school when you were a
Sunday
kid? Did you
school.
do a lot of activities, or did they do a lot of things like, go on picnics?
Oh
or
yeah,
bus
then
rides?
they had and then later they had the NYF used to go to different churches
Yeah.
for high school.
How many people went to church back when you were a
Well,
kid?
there were 150 maybe, quite a few. Now there's 20, right?
Yeah, yeah. There was a
Big
lot.
change, yeah.
50 and 60 when I was,
Yeah.
at least that many.
Yeah, there was probably 150.
Yeah.
Maybe so. And they had two services, one in the morning and one at night.
Oh. How long did that last?
I don't know when, well, it was as long as I remember when I was a kid, but then I don't know when they stopped, and I can't remember. I wasn't sure I went to service. I think it was probably in the 40s. Something.
So, was Easter a big deal in town?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know when I was a kid, it seemed like it was a lot more than it is now. But
Well, yeah,
No.
Well, I was in the Lions Club. They always had a parade on Easter, and that was later.
yeah. How
Don't
about-
ask me what happened yesterday. I can tell you better what happened 50 years ago.
Yeah. How about the weather? I mean, did you have the real bad winters?
No, well, a couple of the winters were bad, yeah.
No snow days for school, right? You had to walk no matter what.
Oh, yeah, everybody walked to school,
Everybody
no buses,
walked,
yeah.
Were you around there? Were you 44 when they had the flood?
Yeah.
Were you in the service or were you?
No, I was in high school.
Okay,
Not
that's
that
right.
old.
That's right. You went to service in the 50s. Yeah. So the 55 flood, you probably remember that too, and that was.
Well, yeah, that was when we got married. It's way after we got married. We went down to Florida and we hit a hurricane in North Carolina, so we had to take the inside route. Yeah, I remember that. A couple in 44, yeah, and we didn't get flooded, but down around the river they got flooded. And that land before you get to those houses, before you get over from the bridge to the underpass, they were all flooded out.
Yeah. See, I don't remember the river ever flooding since I was a kid. I mean, I've never.
No,
seen
I
that
don't
river
think. No, I don't think it has. Yeah. The only time the storm was ever flooded was the basement when there was a little raise on Rushbrook Creek, so we never got even when the creek flooded. But of course, when all those trees went down up above,
Yeah.
that's all I worry about. Because then it blocks and they come down.
Yeah.
They came down through the churchyard and down that back.
Yeah. Did you go to the lakes, Chapman Lake?
Oh,
and
we were
Mark
great
Lake?
when I was young. Yeah, we'd either ride a bicycle or walk up or hitchhike with Lou Cure. Lou used to, they'd be hitchhiking from the Windsor up to the bridge. The first ones there would be at the Windsor. And if you didn't get a ride by 2:30, Lou Cure came around with his truck. He was going up to the farm. So he'd drop us off at Rippon's Corner and then we'd walk home. Or I'd take a bicycle in.
Yeah. So when you went, you didn't go up the big hill. You went up to Rippon's Corners. And
No, well, no, we walked up or we went on a bicycle. It was nice going up and it was stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember Hector Thomas.
Yeah.
But they lived across from Wiegand's there, the house that went down now. And his oldest brother had a car, an old car. So he'd get us about 10 kids in the car, take us up to Chapman Lake for a nickel apiece, and then he'd coast back because he'd have enough money to take his girl out, or enough gas to take his girl out. I always tell Hector about that.
Was the amusement park up at Newton Lake? Did you go
Yeah,
there?
oh, and there's dance hall. When we got older, we used to go to dance hall on Sunday night.
They had the dance hall at Chapman Lake. Was that there?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, well, I was in the service when that got to be popular. By the time I got out, I was going with my wife, so I didn't spend. But it was a popular place in the 50s.
How about vacationing and stuff? Did you travel, go by train or anything?
Not much when I was a kid.
Not when you were a kid?
People didn't travel too much in this day.
No.
Oh, I went down to Raspberry Park one summer with my mother and my aunt.
Let's see, education-wise, we've got all of that on here. How about closest friends when you were growing up?
Well, when I was younger, it was the neighborhood Jimmy Egan, and Keeney Egan, and Billy Badger, and Bert Benman, Streetsville Road, and Esgro's, Johnny Esgro's about my age. Callahan, Bob Callahan, Rippy's younger brother, he was a little older. And then there was a couple of Spicer boys lived down the corner. They had a big family. There was a couple of them.
And you always had kids to play with?
Well, there was
Yeah.
always a gang, yeah.
How about pets? Did you have pets?
Yeah, I had dogs, rabbits, pigeons. The works, I guess. I never had a cat. My father didn't like cats.
You remember the people that had cows over in the lane and stuff?
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
yeah. Maybe your grandparents probably
We
had.
did, yeah. My father used to
Yeah.
walk them over to Zashansky's field. He
I
said,
remember Peter L. Rishnick. Remember Peter L. Maybe not, but his cow used to get loose all the time, and he'd be over in our yard, and he'd be running over. And there was what's name had goats over there too. Chickens, they all had chickens. And,
yeah, come on.
but I had quite a few cows, and over the lane especially.
That's almost. I don't know. You guys have any other questions?
How about any mine accidents or anything like that?
Well, when I was young, they used to have them. They used to blow the well. It was, of course, I was during the Depression. I wasn't as active as I was in the 20s, but they used to blow the siren when somebody got hurt in the mines, and you knew whether they were hurt. Then we had an ambulance at the time, so my father used to take.
You had the ambulance, but just like back in the old days.
It would just get you to the hospital or the
Yeah.
morgue.
You didn't perform any
No,
kind of
we didn't have any.
first
We didn't
aid.
even have. We didn't even have first aid kit. But after I got older, I used to help it. We had the ambulance though. But I was in the service when the PDAC and them started to run a Mayfield.
Yeah, Pediac. I remember that.
Well, when your grandmother in the fire at the Acme,
Yeah.
your grandmother and grandfather, we took them to the hospital. My father and Margaret.
I was going to ask you about that. I saw an article in the paper. That was in the 50s, I think?
1950.
Yeah.
June. That's when I met my wife.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
But-
your ambulance was the one that was in town for that.
Yeah, and I lived in the front. I slept in the front bedroom down there. I didn't ever heard a thing until the telephone rang. And we called Dad, and I went. We took the three of them in the ambulance up to the, and then the two Durkins got burned up. Tommy Perry came out, got his family out of the clothesline after that.
And your family had horses. Did they always have horses, or?
I think about 1936, my father. They used to have a riding academy in Mayfield. The Walkers had a place, and that's where he started riding. Then about his own, we had him up to 1942.
Walker. Was that the William Walker, the
No,
ambulance? They were named after?
They might have been in the same family, probably. They were all related up there. But they were the first names.
They had horses, like a horse riding academy.
Yeah.
Where was that at?
Up there, just on Main Street, and then they had horse shows in the back where the school is now.
Oh, okay.
It was up in that area. I can't remember.
Up where the school is now.
Yeah,
That's where.
their house was in the front. Well, there's some Walkers still, the family still live in that area.
Do you remember any specific accidents, any people who got hurt or killed in the mines?
Oh yeah, there's a
How
Yurchak boy got killed. That's when they start burying. That's when they start burying these people in East Germany. If he died, I'm just remember now what Dad told me. They went over and picked him up and took him. They took him up to our place, and they said, "Well, as long as he's there, that's just what have you." And they start burying. now we burned them all over there.
Yeah.
That's left.
Did you know any of the Vanishes over there?
Oh, yeah.
John Vanish, he died in the 30s, I think.
I don't
in
remember
my
John.
parts.
Paul was Paul,
Yeah.
and then the one that was in the Death March in Bataan. I can't
Yeah,
think of his
that was
name.
George.
George, I couldn't think of his first
Oh, you remember him?
Oh, yeah, I buried him, yeah.
Yeah, he was in that Bataan Death March. We found the
Yeah.
article in the paper I scanned over here.
Yeah,
And it said
Yeah, I
he was
remember.
captured by the Japs.
yeah.
Huh.
Right there in the Philippines when it started. You know,
Yeah.
He spent the whole war in a prison.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot of guys as they're marching, dropping off, dying.
Yeah, oh, sure, I'm sure he did.
He
yeah.
got buried, that disease.
Oh, did he?
The pimples that stays in there, messing him up.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an accident, I think in the early 30s, and John Vanish died in that.
Yeah, that's
And,
right. I would remember that.
Leona Mealy, she was a Falkowski, her father was in it, he lived.
What was his last name?
Falkowski,
Oh, that would be.
he lived through it, my great uncle didn't though.
Oh, he was your great uncle, was he?
Yeah.
I
How about any big fires in town?
see. Oh, there were lots of them. Acme was a big one, and
Yeah.
then well, they had the one over at Friedman's and later, and then they
Yeah.
had the one where the Windsor had it. There was 3 stories before.
You remember that fire? When was
Yeah.
that?
I don't know. Was there more than 50? I don't really remember.
Was it
the
50s?
year. I don't remember the year.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
I
it
remember
was
it. Yeah.
Only 2 stories as long as I remember.
Yeah, well, it might have been even before the 50s. I forget which one. And then, I don't know where the dress factory was. Well, Hollowich has this cigarette place there. And that was another fire there. Right? There were lots of fires like that.
There was always 2 fire companies.
Yeah, I was active in the company for until probably the 70s or 70s.
Yeah.
That's not that.
Yeah, the Crystals were very active. I
And
know
then
they,
we had a lot of fires in Carbondale. We used to get out and call, because a lot of buildings burnt down in Carbondale. Always in the middle of winter.
Yeah, and that, you probably remember that mine fire too, right? The big mine fire they had up
Oh, when I came home from the service, that was going
there? It was
on.
on there.
That's when the people, some of them moved up down by Flowers Field. All the
Yeah.
time.
You remember when the highway went up here, Route 6?
Yeah, I remember them putting it in.
My father told me too, the Grand Army of the Republic Highway, they called it, I guess?
Yeah.
I guess in 1936 they put that in.
Oh, okay.
But there was nothing, not much went up there. My father never drove it up there. He always went to Valley, and most people didn't, because when you get
Yeah.
down to the circle, then you had to go down through West Scranton. But till Harry Sugarman built the place up there. He built that. I think I was in the service. I must have been in the service when he built that. And then they started building
Yeah.
that.
well, I shopped at, as a kid. I went to the 1 and 9 in the old one.
Did you go to the
So
old
when
one?
did they build a new one?
I think it was early 50s sometime.
I went
Probably
there
about
when I was 5. 1960, so it was
59
after
or
60.
something
Oh,
like
six,
that.
before 60, I
60.
think, wasn't it?
Well, I remember going there when I was 5, the old one. So it happened after
Oh,
1960.
maybe I was wrong
Yeah.
on that.
So I was 5 and I went there. with my
Okay,
father.
because I know I went to the old one, and
Yeah.
I just don't remember when they built the new one. Right?
I thought it was while I was in the service,
It
but
was
it might have
after
been,
that.
might have been later than that.
Well, he might have built it, but didn't.
No,
Right, yeah.
when he when he was in Einan, they used to have a traffic. I mean, we weren't supposed to sell on Sunday, but he had a drugstore. And then he had the entranceway on the side, so no entrance in the front, so you had to go through the drugstore. And he'd have a cop there, Archibald cop there, directing traffic on Sunday. In the 40s, yeah.
Oh,
They enforced the blue laws back then, right?
yeah.
Well, they
Nothing was open.
No, yeah, you weren't supposed to sell stores.
Oh, so that store was big even in the 40s. Huh?
Oh, sure, as
Yeah.
long as I can remember, yeah, he got active. He had a drugstore, he was a druggist. And he
Yeah.
had the place, first place, and he'd start buying stuff here and there, and then he ended up building a building alongside of it there.
And that's a bottle I never seen. Was a Sugarman's, like a pharmacy
Oh,
bottle.
yeah.
Well, I don't know, really. They didn't do much.
No.
Well, I managed a few of the, from Einan had drugstore, went in for a drug.
Yeah, see, I don't. That's.
And he never, when as long as I know him, he was always in their plants department.
General merchandise.
And they'd say, he'd outbid his sale, he'd undersell his sales. There were people going in there buying, and have a refrigerator brought. And hello, Harry. Harry would give him a price for it.
That's what they said.
Yeah, he died in the late 60s. My father died in 73, and my father had the same private duty nurse that Harry had when he moved down. Just
Okay.
told me she took care of Harry. Yeah, he died, well, he had a stroke, I guess it was on the job. He was at the cash register or something, keeled over.
Really?
I remember when he died. I was in high school, I think, or junior high school.
Well, yeah, it must
Been
have,
60.
it was late 60s.
Yeah,
because Dad
68,
died in
yeah.
73, yeah, it was a couple years before
Yeah.
that.
And then the kid took it over, and that was the end of the store. Ran it in the ground.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but things changed. And Walmart come in, and today you'd never last with
Never.
with Amazon. You know, you
Yeah,
never really
right.
buy it over
That's
Amazon.
right. How about any epidemics in town? Do you remember anything?
No, they had the flu in the 1970s. That's when my father started helping his father. They had
Oh, wow.
the flu epidemic. It was 1917.
17, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't remember that.
Now he had your father ran the business?
My father and my grandfather. My grandfather at that time. My
Yeah.
father was only about 17 at that time.
So they probably buried a lot of people that died of that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did a real lot die in town?
Quite, yeah, I don't know how many. I don't.
In Archibald, my grandma said they were stacking coffins by the grow building, just stacking them up on top of each other.
Yeah, they
There
had
was
a
so
lot of,
many.
they had a lot of others. That's when my father had to get the help. They didn't have any help.
Yeah.
Do you remember the old Shady Side Cemetery when they were buried?
No,
up
I
there?
remember when they moved it. My father had the contract for moving it in
Oh, really?
1931. Yeah. Hudson Coal wanted the coal under
They wanted to call
under
it.
yeah.
there, so they
And then they
moved
never dug it up.
Well, they might have. I think they mined it.
They might have mined. Okay.
So it was mostly deep.
They didn't want the bodies to fall in.
Well,
when they
yeah,
mined
right.
it.
When they, and then, well, then the people, there was 1,800 bodies in there.
Wow.
And which they could bury wherever they wanted. They had contract, they'd take it. And most of them either opened Valley View in Germany at that time. So
Yeah.
most of them went to, they split up in the family. Some wanted to go in the country and some wanted to stay in
Yeah.
Germany. So
Yeah.
that's when the two.
Who owned the land where the cemetery is in German, and who started that cemetery? You remember?
That's when it started, when they moved the bodies.
Okay.
I imagine, as far as I know, DuPont owned most of it.
The powder mills?
The powder mill, they had, they used to sell dynamite to the mines.
Yeah. So who took it over? Was it an association, a cemetery association?
Oh, yeah, it was just associated,
Okay.
yeah.
And who ran that? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know, the original ones were, John Green was active in it. They were secretary.
The guy that lived not too far from Art Wilson, he ran it for.
Oh, you mean Earl Gibbs?
Recently,
Earl
Gibbs,
Gibbs,
Earl
yeah,
Gibbs.
Earl went
Gibbs,
to,
yeah.
I graduated.
Yeah.
Well, he sold the powder in the end, him and his father, at the powder mill there, that place that Art Wilson owned. But they weren't, I mean, at the beginning, there were buildings all over the area, and they used to store dynamite.
Yeah.
But they ran the end, and then when they needed a, well, John Green was the secretary, and then or Bill Young, I don't think you remember him, he died above the grave.
No.
Beginning, and John Green took it over and did different ones. They used to dig them by hand.
I was just gonna say,
And
did they dig them by hand?
Yeah, they used to have, as soon as they got the call, they had to get right
Start
away,
digging it.
find out where the grave was. So
How
it
long
took
did it take to dig?
2 or 3 days. That's why they had to get
Yeah.
years later that it
What
was.
did they do in the wintertime?
Yeah, good question.
Usually they hadn't got it buried. I can only remember 2 different times. This was later, and this was in the 90s. There was, then in 93, I think it was, and one a couple years later. And the third one, we had 4 stored in our place. But we had one went up to St. John's, one went to Germany, 2 went to Calgary. But we had there for a couple of months. Then the next storm, I came on a Saturday, Saturday morning. The guys were going over to hunting camp. It was early March for the party for the weekend. I said, I'll be over after the funeral Saturday morning. And we come out of the church, and it was. We got the hearse as far as behind the store. We had a garage there, and put the body in there. I never did get over there. The guys were snowed in 4 or 5 days over there. And I said I always wanted to be snowed in over there. I didn't make it.
Did you know anybody that ever lived up in Edgerton? Like
No,
Joe
that
Batsky
went out in the early 1900s. I used to ride the did. Up there.
Do you remember a lot of foundations?
Oh yeah, back in the 40s. They were perfect.
Were the roads and everything still there?
I don't know about now.
No, I mean when you were.
Oh yeah, we had the whole. I mean, we couldn't drive up there, but there was when you could go up by the where the dam is now,
Yeah.
the creek, and you could go up to Carbondale, come down from what behind it, go down the passes up there, you go up, there. We go up one way and come back another way. Yeah, that was quite a trip.
And there was a lot of foundations still,
When I don't know what I said, I don't know what
not many now.
I don't, have
Do
you
you
been up
remember-
there lately? Or have
Oh,
you-
yeah, we do tours.
Oh, do you?
We did,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Uh,
No foundations left?
A few, not many though.
Well, they didn't have a lot, there was a half
Yeah.
dozen.
Joe Givat said he remembers a jail cell up there. Do you remember the old jail cell?
Up there?
Yeah, near where the Hunters Camp Pavilion was.
Oh, yeah?
He said there was a jail cell
I
there when
didn't
he
know
was a
that. I
kid.
know they had one down at the community house here, they had a jail.
Yeah, I remember that one.
He's about 94,
Rippy
I
showed
think
me
now.
that.
So, how old did you say you were?
88,
88. Oh, yeah, he's about 94. He remembers it though.
yeah. Who was that?
Joe Givat.
Oh, I know Joe, he was a customer of mine. In fact, he had money coming for
On the main
years.
street in Archbold.
Yeah, he had money coming for years after his wife died, he didn't buy any. And he just put his grandson, he just bought him in Oxford and
Yeah. He had a daughter die at 12 years old, I think, back in the 60s.
For the 6
Okay, what other kind of notable things happened in the borough that you can remember that stick out? Celebrations or tragedies?
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever?
well, after the Second World War, in 46, they had a big parade in town. Matter of fact, I rode the horse, and I have a picture with on the horse.
Yeah, we have some pictures of that.
And
Was there any Civil War veterans still alive when you were young?
No, I don't remember.
My father did remember some.
Does he?
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Well, I'm sure they probably were. But I
He was
don't
born in
remember.
23.
Yeah, he's 7 years older.
Yeah. He said there were
Yeah,
a
my
couple
father
of
never talked about that. He was born in 22, I think. But he never
Your
talked
dad?
about. Yeah,
Probably about that
he
age.
never talked about Civil War.
No, I don't remember.
He never talked about the war at all. World War II even.
Did he? Well, he
Never.
was in it. A lot of
He
guys.
was in it, but he
I remember Danny Couture tell me he was in the Philippines.
Yeah,
Well,
he-
he was in Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor, yeah.
And he was he never got back. He was a medic, and he says he never talked about the war until the war picture there a few years before he quit. He says then he'd start talking about it. Before that, he never went.
Yeah, my father never talked about
Now,
it.
usually
My
most of,
dad
the,
never did.
most of the guys that saw actually.
Yeah, my father was in Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge and up in Belgium, and he came back and he just told me that's where he was, and then
Yeah,
never talked
yeah.
about it. I love hearing stories
Yeah.
about the war, but
Bob Durst used to tell me stories sometimes, in the later years.
yeah,
Yeah, we interviewed him about 4 years ago.
Bob, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was wounded and he went back and he said he hitchhiked. He wanted to go with the outfit he started with, and he went right to hitchhike back to the back.
Huh.
Yeah, he saw a lot of action.
How about any people that did anything out of the ordinary or spectacular in town? Anyone that comes to mind? That you
Well,
remember?
Idris Edwards was very active in the fire company. He was the fire company. He was Mr. Christopher. They
Yeah.
didn't think the company would last without him, but he died in about 56 or 57. Company's still going.
yeah.
He was active
You
in
guys used to have picnics. Did you always have parades and picnics in town with fire companies?
Yeah, they had the bandstand where where Mellons lived, you know.
Up here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fire company owned that lot,
Oh, okay.
and they had a bandstand. And Will Rowe used to play 30s or every Saturday night. He had a band, and he'd have a band.
Uh-huh.
And then every summer, the fire company would have a picnic there. And underneath the bandstand, there was like a basement there, and we used to have the bar in there.
Oh, okay.
You work in there, and then
Never knew that.
no, that was just back. I don't think it after the water. Probably before.
Yeah.
Burnham was.
What were the big businesses in town when you were young?
Well, Allen's was, Baker Brothers.
Baker
They
Brothers.
were, remember Allen's?
Where Allen's
Baker
store.
Brothers was there. And they had everything, they sold everything. Meat, everything. They had a grocery store in the back end, and then they had all clothing, everything running. And they went out in the early 40s in the war. And Allen's were across the street where the building right there where Johnny Daniel was.
Yeah.
They were in there. And then during the war, they bought.
It was a variety store, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's where Allen's was.
They sold out, and Jimmy lived up, and his father lived upstairs.
Okay.
Uncle Elwood, they lived down where Couture's lived down. Then they bought that place, and they were big in the river, big all over the
Yeah.
county. And probably, in fact, that they in Sampers, the only ones that had a Boy Scout, they had to go to one of those stores. And everybody was in the Boy Scouts. and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
The building where the community house is now, when did that become the community house? You remember?
My father was Burgess at the time. It was early 40s. The borough bought it. I don't know who. I forget who owned it.
It was winter, wasn't it?
Winners.
C.D. Winners?
Winners owned one of them. There was, I think, where the vacant lot was. But there might have all the business on that road there, from the church down the bottom of the hill. They're all.
And who owned that house next to the, would be the community center, the empty lot, and then that nice house next to that?
Kay Overmiller lived
Well,
there
Carey,
when I was a kid.
Carey, Attorney Carey, he was probably the wealthiest man in town.
I was gonna say that my son was gonna buy that house, and he didn't buy it, and the people that bought it said when
Bilski bought it.
there was a story about they took the curtains down and there was money rolled up inside
I heard that,
him and the
yeah, I
curtains.
heard that.
Yeah.
But I know Freddie Zelensky's sister and her husband bought that.
Right, right. I just remember Kay Overmiller. Do you remember her?
She was a niece to
Yeah.
Carey. He died probably in the early 40s. She lived there for
They said the garage in the back, you'd pull the car in and it
yeah,
had a
I don't
turntable,
remember. I heard that. I knew that, but I never.
had a turntable so the car would
You turn around,
rotate
so you
around.
could drive out.
so you didn't have to back
pull
out.
in and you turn around. And yeah.
Yeah, so they were pretty wealthy down there, huh?
Yeah, Carey was, H.D. Carey.
That was the worked at the glass factory?
Huh?
Did he work at the
No,
glass
he was a
factory?
lawyer.
Oh, he was the lawyer.
There was Harold Carey worked it.
I know Harold had the glass, but I thought HD would have been
No,
his father. That
no,
worked-
I don't think, they might have been related, but it's distant.
Yeah, I remember Harold Carey cutting the glass in the house.
He used to make, yeah.
Yeah. He had the
And
thing
there's
down.
Patty Meehan too, he would work there, he was the best like that.
Yeah. 'Cause I know he used to cut the glass right in the basement of
Yeah,
the house when I lived there.
Was
Yeah,
that-
he did it
Harold
right
Was
Carey.
there.
that the Carey that lived on the corner of Rushbrook and Lincoln?
No, right on the corner of Jefferson
Jefferson.
and Bacon.
Oh, okay.
Right where
okay.
Joe Bielman lives now.
Right, right.
Who lives there now?
Joe Bielman. Because I lived on this side.
Remember, you lived on the other side.
Carey's lived on the other side, and down in their basement, he had the
Yeah,
basement set up
yeah.
to cut the glass. I remember going over there and watching him cut glass.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you used to make, I think we
Yeah.
have some.
Didn't Betty Connor live there one time on
No,
one
she
side?
lived, no, I don't think so. She lived most of, when I was growing up there, the Moore owned the house there, next to Bergen's. You know, Bergen, next house is,
Were the powder mills still in existence when you were?
oh yeah, they were in existence sooner or later. We were out of school, they were still not as big as they were, but they're still sort of power.
Yeah.
I mean, during,
Do you remember any of the explosions that were done?
no, I don't remember that, but they were back in the 20s.
Yeah, they were early, but I didn't know if there was any later that we
No.
just didn't have
I know they
records of.
sold dynamite. Earl and his father sold dynamite there.
I think there was an explosion in 1909, blew out the windows in St. Thomas Church. That's how
Yeah, I
loud
don't
it was.
remember that. I know they had a couple explosions, but I didn't remember from that time.
There was a guy inside that never found parts of him or
Oh,
nothing.
yeah.
But you remember the milkman coming around with the
Oh,
milk
and
and
Tyson Dare and Cure, they both had.
Cure and
The Tyson had a podgetized
Cure,
milk,
yeah.
and Cure had the
Pasteurized.
the pasture. Yeah, so naturally, we had to buy milk from both of them. So. And there were 8 barbershops in town.
Eight
Wow.
barbershops.
And my father used to, they all either bought
How much?
furniture or had funerals from him. I went to Gerald Bruce, who was down the foot of the hill, so he didn't have to. But the others, every 2 weeks, you go to a different.
Different
And they
barbershops.
all knew it.
How much was it for a haircut?
Oh, 25 cents.
Who had the barbershops? I know Danny sure had one later. but-
Later, no, first Gerald Bruce one had it full of the hill, and then Frank Shashansky, Tony Rubel had the one with Janine.
What you need is.
And then there was
That was
Willie
that
Merrick
lady.
had one in the basement at first.
With Danny Couture.
Yeah, he was a grandfather to Bobby Daly. And then way up the street, George Griffiths had one. The pool, that was Ciotti went in there later before he moved to it. And Pete Whitney, he had one. And part of that was Sam Solomon's ice cream parlor, and then Jimmy Mullally had one when I was in high school. But he had a barber shop on the other side, the Rossi neighborhood.
I remember my grandmother talking about Pete Whitney's barber
Yeah,
shop.
Pete Whitney. He was active in that.
Richie-
He'd tell you the same stories every time you went.
You mentioned you're related to that C.A. Battenberg who was in the Civil War. He was in the Civil War.
Charles Battenberg.
Yeah, Charles. Did anyone in
He-
your family talk about him, saying you had a Civil War vet in your
Well,
family?
we knew that. Yeah, he was a brother to my grandfather.
Oh, okay.
That's how my grandfather got over here. My grandfather was only 14 when he came over. But he went up. I imagine that's where he went. They lived in Archibald. I think he was the postmaster in Archibald.
Do you know what battles he fought in? Did they ever talk about that?
I did hear somewhere along the line, but
Yeah. Where's he buried, do you know?
I don't know really.
I don't think it's in
He-
German.
No. Well, he lived in Archibald most of it.
Yeah, I
And
don't
my,
think it's in Archibald.
my grandfather made one of the first caskets, another casket. My Uncle John made a type, written out, and my grandfather told him everything that he needed. He said, I remember that. I still have the thing down the house, but I remember like he said, he made one of the first caskets.
Huh.
And I think that Captain Battenberg he was married to a miller, I think. And they went bankrupt and then somebody else.
Well, the casket company used to be over East Germany before it came over here.
I don't know.
No.
Did it? Are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yeah.
No,
Well, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it was over in, right by Butler's over there. That's where the original casket company
See,
was.
I
And then they
never knew
moved
that.
over
My
here.
grandfather never.
In the 1800s, it was over there.
Well, that's when my grandfather must have been there.
Yeah.
As long as I was there, I used to get a sawdust out there for the horses. I used to get.
Irene Kaufman was saying something about East Germany being cut off from the rest. Did you remember that? She said we were like
See, everybody, all the immigrants, like your grandfather, that they're all immigrants, and naturally, like every other nationality, they're all in one section. And I think Irene's father was the first one to move over,
Really?
up. They're
Yeah.
just across from the old school, the grade school.
Yeah, over on
Yeah.
that.
And Zaroka, John
Yeah.
Zaroka.
She
But
said
he
we
was
were
the-
cut off. From
no,
the
he was
rest.
a real nice. I really knew him. Well, I knew my dad good.
Her father was good friends with my grandfather.
Good with,
She
well,
said.
my father was too.
Yeah.
But
And she said
and
they
she
got,
moved. They moved over, and the people on this side didn't like it.
that's what she said,
That's
the
what she
people
said, yeah.
I
didn't
know.
like that.
I was only a kid then. I went to school with Joe, her brother, and then she had another brother, Steve. I know.
Oh.
He was a little younger.
Yeah.
And I remember when they moved over, right, some of the people, old English people, they.
Okay.
But it's funny, my grandfather come over here, and the priest in Archibald, he just left, had a funeral with him, and not too before I left, I had another funeral. He says, you belong to Methodist Church there, don't you? I said, how do you know that? He says, you told me that the last, and it was a couple of years, you told me that the last time. I said, well, why would you remember? He said, well, my mother was Lutheran, my mother was German, and I said, every German I ever met was Lutheran. But I think my grandfather came to an English, which college put down in English and Welsh at the time.
Yeah.
And during the First World War, he was a German immigrant. He was very all English. I often thought of that.
Where in Germany did your family come from?
My grandfather's people came around Cassel. I forget the name of the town. My other grandparents, my mother's parents came from northwest from near Hanover. They had a big farm. And I went over there when I was in England. They still lived there. But my grandfather brought us. He came over when he was 17, and eventually he got his whole 5 sisters, 2 brothers over, and then and his father and mother came over. So I knew where my mother used to write there because she could speak German. So we went over and found them, and went to their big farm there. And I said, well, there's never a war. I'm going to go out in Iowa somewhere with like a farm because all the cities at that time, 52, were all bombed out. They were rebels. But the farm was just the same way. And they couldn't speak English. In the American zone especially, all the girls and everybody could speak English.
Did you speak German?
No. But there was one guy that married my cousin, second or third cousin, maybe she did. And he was a prisoner of war. He was captured in Italy, he was a prisoner of war. And he could speak English, so he did all the translating.
Yeah.
Then my grandmother's brother was still alive then. He was in the 90s. And they wouldn't take him in the First World War because he had a bad heart.
wow.
He lived through the two wars.
Did you know a lot of World War I vets?
Huh?
Did you know a lot of World War I veterans?
Here?
Yeah.
Oh
Germany.
gosh, I knew them all.
Did
Yeah.
you really? Yeah.
Missed about. They after the war, they all came. That was when the town really boomed. All the bars remodeled because they got a 5250 club. They had 5220. You get $20 a week for 52 weeks. And of course, none of them worked. They all drank, and they lived with their parents. Their parents
They all
didn't charge them
drank.
anything. They got the war. Yeah, they spend $20 a week in the bar. And that was really active.
That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, they were real active in the town then. In the late war, after the war, 45, 46.
How about the one that carved the rock up there by Edgerton? And that they have it down in a little park down here. The carving from the First World War. Did you know that thing?
Well, there's a first aid monument.
It's down here by the
Yeah,
little
but there was
park.
over in past Aylesworth, there was a rock over there with a
Oh.
carving on it.
Oh, was it?
And then they tried to bring it over here and they failed to get it out. I told them
Yeah.
to call me and I'd get it for them, but they didn't.
Yeah.
But they took in pictures of it and then they drew it on the monument that's down here now. But there's a rock in the woods,
down there.
Yeah.
and that was a World War I guy, right?
Sawisky, I forget the guy's name. My father knew him, but I don't know if you knew him or not. I might be wrong on the name. I thought it
What's
was,
his last name?
it might have been Sawisky,
There was a whiskey in town. I remember the name.
but he wrote on the rock, "Peace is great, but mother is sorrowful." But like,
Oh,
wherever
yeah?
he lost a kid in the war or something in the
Yeah,
war.
I didn't know
She
that.
lost his son. Yeah.
You know things I didn't know.
But there was a lot of World War I vets you knew as you're
World
growing
War
up.
I or World War II?
One, first
Oh,
one.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the late 30s, the Legion was active in town for the World War, and they used to have, every 4th of July, they had fireworks and a picnic up Fowler Field, the field,
Wow.
the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
And this Powers kid, he was about my age, this was back in the 30s. One didn't go off, and he picked it up and blew his hand off. I think it was about 39 or so, and then
Yeah.
after that, I saw him one time doing that at a funeral. He said,
Took the whole hand off?
well, a good part of it, yeah. Well, he picked up the and then went off when
Yeah.
I think Nick was talking about that
yeah,
Yeah.
Matthijs?
Yeah, at the
he
last
know- he know.
interview. He was talking about the kid that had his hand blown
Yeah,
off.
Powers.
How about the police in town? Who were the policemen?
Well, Dick Muehlheim saw it. He was chief for quite a while. And then before him was Noble. It was a Noble.
Russell Noble,
And then after that was Trezise had it for years.
Glenn Trezise.
And Trezise didn't even drive. He'd walk all around town, and they had two lights, one at the top of the hill and one through the. So the cop, if he saw the light on, he knew he was needed. That's how.
Huh.
Do you remember Eddie Cummings? He was
Yeah, they lived across the street from me.
he was my great uncle, my grandfather's brother.
What was it?
And I think he got hit by a car directing traffic.
On
right
Christmas,
down
right
on
here.
Christmas Eve.
Yes,
yeah.
I remember
And he never did anything orange. It was late at night. He just wore his cop uniform. And on Christmas Eve, yeah, I don't know.
My great uncle, yeah. He died a week later in the hospital.
Yeah, and he lived right there across the street from me, next to Farrell's,
Yeah.
for years. In fact, he used to come every funeral. He never had to call the police. The police hired him to go to the funeral. And he knew when we had a funeral, he said, he'd be out there. He didn't drive, but he'd stand out front, watch the track, people going around the curve.
Yeah.
And then he'd get in a hearse and go up to Rushburg. We went out the country. He'd go up to Rushburg Street, stop the traffic over there.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah, I
Alaska
remember.
Cummings, is my grandfather's youngest brother.
I didn't know.
1967, I think that
I
was.
said, well, yeah, probably in the I'd say in the 60s. I don't remember what year.
I never knew him, but I had pictures of him.
Yeah, I know him very well.
Yeah,
He had a couple of
wow.
daughters there, and he had a son Bandit that was a mechanic.
Do you have anything you'd like to add about growing up in Germany? Did it change a lot since you were
Oh,
young?
definitely.
For the better, for the worse?
For the worse, I'd
For the
say.
Crime
Not
probably,
because of the politics, but
But
I mean,
crime
the people that
probably-
lived here.
Yeah.
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 crime probably wasn't as bad as it is
No,
now, right?
guys. Well, you never even heard of drugs. I never heard of drugs till I went overseas.
Yeah.
And then a couple of cooks used to through high school, and then
Wouldn't have to lock the doors like you do now?
Never.
Buline's where they lived, next to the drugstore.
Yeah.
When they sold the house, they wanted the key for the front door. She told you that today, Berkeley. She said she still doesn't have a key. And I said, we never had a key for the front door. We had 6 kids, and then
Wow.
10 years old, whatever. Didn't even have a key for the front.
Yeah, we never locked the doors.
No, we
No.
didn't have to, but.
As I got into high school, I remember my grandmother locking the doors.
My mother used to, because she came from
Yeah.
Jersey City, you know.
Yeah, she used to, I remember she used to just have a little latch door in the
Yeah.
back screen door, and then she had a skeleton key in the front door.
Yeah,
And
anybody could open it, so.
Yeah, anybody had a skeleton
I
key.
was just gonna say that anybody can
Sure.
sell it. Gee.
Yeah, I used to buy them in Miller's 5 and 10.
Yeah.
Miller's was quite a place too. I hear older people, a little younger than me, come back and they say, I remember buying candy in Miller's.
Yeah, me.
They started in the Ford.
My Aunt Margaret worked there.
And there were three Acmes in town, AMPs in town at one time.
3 a.m. There was one here, wasn't there?
Yeah, Jim Roseborn, Dale's father, was manager there.
Yeah.
And then there was one, I think where the 5 and 10 was.
Where the convenience store is, isn't there one there? An AMP there?
Well, yeah, there was one there, and then
Yeah.
after Seltzer's, Weinstein's had its grocery store. The Acme was across the street.
Yeah. And
There-
then there was a newspaper in town.
Oh, Bayfield News, yeah. German News.
German News,
Yeah, he lived, he had a shop there. I think they,
Was there a pharmacy where Convenient was? Because when they tore that building down, there was a lot of pharmacy bottles in the basement.
well, I don't know.
There was another drugstore.
There was a drugstore, Ellsby's had a drugstore
Yeah,
across.
but
Yeah,
no,
it's right
there
here.
was another.
And there was one up on a quarter.
I
don't
have
remember.
some of the
I
bottles.
think they just called it the German drugstore.
It was up by the restaurant, corner of the restaurant.
Was it?
I don't remember that one. I didn't tell him
But where Convenient was, when they tore that down, I helped the guy tear it down, and of course,
about it.
even then I was collecting stuff. So I
Well,
went,
after the Seltzers of Weinstein's, there it became a dress factory.
I remember it being a dress
And
factory.
in the back part, even when Weinstein's was there, Tony Serra.
Tony Serra had the
Yeah.
And then Joe Molinaro had the building next to it.
yeah.
The little building next
But on this side, I remember it being a green building with big glass windows in the front.
to it. Well,
And,
it was a grocery store.
Was there a grocery store there?
That's what, at the corner.
Yeah.
And next to the corner, there was there was another store. There was a pool room. Few of us had a pool room there. And then George Griffiths had a barber shop. That was in that area.
And I remember a guy.
And then Bunce had a building
In
next to
town.
it.
Pete Bunt. I remember
Charlie
that.
Avery had started his flower shop there. Then Weston had a bakery
And then
there.
Pastor Brandon
He had a
the.
bakery there. Yeah. Then it burnt. Then it fired another flowers there.
There was a guy in town when I was, I would say high school age or maybe later, that ran a newspaper out of there.
Out of there.
Was that Brandon? Did
Out of
he-
there?
Ran it
Yeah.
out of that building right next to Rossi's restaurant.
Yeah.
He might have. Yeah, I don't think he printed it. Did he? I don't think he
Yeah,
did.
Pastor Brandon had something.
Yeah, he
there.
had a.
But this guy's
Printing
name, I can't
shop.
think of his
Was it
name.
Brandon?
No.
No?
Aren't?
Orange.
well,
that was his
that was
son-in-law.
Brandon's son-in-law.
That was
That's
his
right. He had a
son-in-law.
place there. Used to
But
get
he
a
And
had-
they
club.
I
was
remember
get
his
a
son
club.
Ephraim Arndt.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
we
Aren't.
used to get a
Yeah,
club.
the
club.
Carol Brandons.
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
a.
because Aren't, he was I remember he liked me because I played sports and he played tennis or handball.
They still live in Carbondale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I remember that, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
the
that's
guy
right.
came in to tear the building down, and that's when I went in and I found all these big old medicine bottles.
Is that where you found in that building? The next
in that
second?
building? Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Avery had a flower shop in there before.
But I have a bottle that's that big and it's got a glass stopper in it, and it's still sealed and everything's still in it.
Yeah.
I don't want to open it, but it's
Does it say anything
nothing
on
on
the
it.
label?
It's just a plain bottle with no writing on it, but it's got a glass stopper like from the 1800s. or early
Solomon's
1900s.
had a hardware store in there for a while, too. You might remember that, no? No, I guess that was right after the war. around
Yeah,
that
I remember
time.
the
Three or
hardware.
four different, that was before, before Hartman.
Yeah, I remember getting a newspaper there at Caceres, I think it was.
Yeah,
We used to pick up the papers
yeah, that's
there.
right, they used to leave them off there.
And my brother had the paper route for over in East German, and we used to take the wagon, and I'd go help him and pull the wagon
The
and
weekday paper, the Sunday.
Sunday paper.
Well, Holly's had that contract for years. All the Holly kids, from
Yeah.
the oldest one on down.
My brother didn't last long. He only had it for a little while.
And the Bobby. I know it all the time I was growing up was one Bobby after another. Then during the war, Billy and them all went to service.
Yeah.
And I remember when Teresa and Marcia Harvey used to deliver papers.
You know where they used to live there,
Yeah.
where the parking lot is.
Yeah.
We're in the parking lot for Wayne's.
Sheridan's lived on one side.
Yeah.
John Mullally was a good friend of my father. He
I
always,
used to tip a few with him.
yeah.
John was my second father.
Was it? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I knew John
Oh,
good.
he-
Except we get in there and P-Lax or balloons and start arguing politics.
Right from the day I
Remember
he
Nick
died, he
Pila?
called me
Huh?
Snars.
You remember Nick Pila?
Steve P-Lax.
Steve Pila.
Oh
you
yeah,
remember?
we used to hunt with him.
He was a cousin of my grandfather's.
Was he a cousin or was
He was
his
a
wife?
cousin. He was a
His wife was a D.
Yeah, no, he was the cousin.
Was he?
Yeah. And when my Uncle Nick got married down in Virginia, he sent home, he said, I need $1,000 or $500. He wouldn't say what for, and my grandfather got all nervous, he thought he was in trouble, and he got money out, he borrowed off of Steve Pilak.
Yeah,
He sent it
yeah.
down there. He got married down in Virginia.
Steve was funny. He never usually a bartender like Adams would have to buy you a drink once in a while. It was only 10 cents a drink. You buy the whole bar, drink for $1.
Yeah.
That's all you had to buy all night, because then they'd
Wow.
start buying. But Steve would never buy a drink, but when he went out, he was in a fire, he was active in a fire company too. And then I hunted with him a few times. When he got out with the fire company, he'd spend like it. Yeah, then, what's his name, had a Jerry Schwartzberger had a
Schwartzberger.
name. Adam Machikowski was across the street. Remember him? He was, his wife was from East German, she was a
Yeah,
Gardeski.
yeah.
Because I went to school with her. I mean, she taught me in high school.
They're the ones that used to make the really good pierogies, right?
I don't know.
At Adams.
Adam, oh yeah, Adams.
Yeah.
Is that Andy Adams' mother?
No.
She used
No.
to make good clothes.
No, this was
I know.
Adam
She
Machikowski.
said-
His last name was
I'd be coming home
Machikowski.
from lunch and she'd be waiting on the porch with a bag for me. My mother would see
Oh,
me
is
coming
that
down
right?
the alley with the bag.
Oh,
and she's
yeah?
like,
Yeah.
I guess they're not eating
Well, we were
lunch.
in school. I was in school with Andy Adams.
Well,
And,
this name, Adam Machikowski.
well, this is Adams.
I remember Adams
Yeah.
lived down.
And his mother
He
used
was
to
on the
always
Stella.
make her
Oh, yeah?
pierogies,
Yeah.
and then we'd
They
come
were
to school
good.
and we'd always have pierogies.
And
they were
Mrs.
good.
Mrs. Jabinski over the lane too. She always had a bag.
Which Jabinski, remember which?
Joe's mother, Joe Jabinski.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to know everybody in the lane. Now you go over there. In fact, I was having dinner one night over the hall there with they had some going on with Sammy Tyson, his wife, and Rita and I were sitting together. Sammy says, gee, I used to peddle milk over here, and there's only 2 families I knew from the bridge to the hall. And I got to thinking later, there's only 2 families left of it. My Sharks, and I think Anna Franchak was there. Yeah, she's got that. I think, Goloszewski's there.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah.
And all of us.
How many stores were over the east side? And I know there were Rudolph's Grocery and Red's.
George LaPata. He was
Les
behind.
Jacks.
Huh?
Les Jacks have a...
Les Jacks had, yeah, they had one. Kuzma's, yeah.
My Uncle Kuzma's father,
Right, yeah. I met, his was in the middle of Delaware Street.
Oh, okay.
The first block, I think the first block.
Do you remember when that
Yeah.
Castle Garden or whatever the heck that is?
Oh, yeah.
When that was active?
Yeah. That would be in his early, what's the name on that, Cooch.
Yeah.
And he used to, when the immigrants come over, they'd all,
What was it, a hotel or
the
what?
apartments. you know.
Apartments, yeah.
And when the immigrants came in from Russia, or wherever, most of they used to say they were from Russia, but all the ones that we buried, the first generation, they're all born in Austria.
My
Everyone,
grandfather too, he came from Austria.
everyone over there, they call them Russians, but well, it was part of Russia then
Yeah.
when they left, but they're all Austrian. All
Austria,
born in
yes,
Austria.
my grandfather too.
But that in the 30s, that was,
Mhm.
then around the 40s and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew the lane as well as they did anything. We delivered furniture and everything also.
Yeah.
My best customers in the furniture business were from East Germany.
Did you? I don't know if my grandmother had furniture in her house, and I don't know if you sold it in your store or
No, I
not,
didn't.
but it was Gettysburg Furniture Company.
Yeah, that was before my time. Pretty good, yeah.
But the dining room table and stuff, when I looked at it, I refinished it, and it was marked Gettysburg Furniture Company.
I'll tell you a story. This fellow called me a month or so ago from Florida. He wanted 2 mattresses, 2 good mattresses, 2 good. I said, well, you want spring or gel or combination? No, he said, I want spring. So I bought him 2 of the best. He came up and he was building a home over in the Poconos. He lived in Florida. So when he came up, he got the mattress. He said, you know, he said, we're related. He says, my great-grandmother was a sister to the twins, and one of the twins was my grandfather. And the 4 girls and 2 boys come over. I heard the story. My grandfather's last one to die. He died in 1934. And he says his great-grandmother met somebody in New York when they were coming over. And she was in the same town. They didn't know each other, but they got married. And on down. So then they come back. Now he says, we're moving up here in August. I want a queen-side and a floor. But then he told me how we related. He said, yeah, he said, they came over here. And he said he had a picture on his cell phone. He said, my great-grandmother bought this from your grandfather in 1895. Dining room suit. We had dining room suit. It was still in good shape. They still had it.
Yeah.
And then they had a bedroom suit that said it was made about the same time. The funny part about it, he got talking. He said his father was his mother's son. He said, my father was in England during the Korean War. He said, I was there. Where was that? He's Fairford. I said, that's the base house. He got him on the phone and he talked to me. And he came a little later than that, but for about 6 months we were on the same base in Fairford.
Wow.
We never knew in England. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll tell you something else. I was over there the last Christmas Eve. I was over there, 54. No, 53, because I got back and I'm going down Piccadilly Circus on Christmas Eve, and I look at this guy, and he looks at me. It's Paul McDonough, Alice's brother.
Uh-huh.
He lived across the street from me.
Wow.
And he didn't know, he was a pilot, he was over there for 90 days. And he didn't know I was over there, and I didn't know him. And my daughter was talking to his wife, they were in for a visit, and my daughter was friends with George's daughter. So, he said, you're the one your father's the one my father met in London.
Interesting. Now, how about nicknames? Was there a lot of nicknames?
Oh, everybody in Spain, the lane, everybody has nicknames.
Really? What are some do you remember after?
Spitter Jabinski,
Spitter. How did he get that?
who knows?
Tobacco, maybe?
And Deemer was Walter, that was his brother. And in fact, his mother used to come in the store, she'd say, Deemer's coming home this week. And oh God, well, Bomba Sustack, all the Sustacks were called Bomba. And they all had
Hungry Mike.
Hungry Mike.
Mike,
I went to school with his son, his oldest.
Hungry Mike? How did he get
Mike
that?
Misha. Well, he had a flock of kids. They lived just before you run the underpass on the left. The house is down now.
Yeah.
And he was where he was town drunk, But Mike used to, every time he'd come back, he had a son who lived up in Nicholson. He was in the army, he went in the Air Force, went in the army, out of school, and then stayed for 20 years. Then he got a job at the post office. He was triple dipping.
Oh.
But every time he'd come up, he'd stop in the store and shoot the breeze. I haven't seen him in a couple of years, but as far as I know, he's still there. In fact, he did graduate.
Yeah. You were born in 1930, you said.
30.
I think that's the year that Lechmonic got struck by lightning. You probably heard of that. That boy got struck by lightning.
Oh,
Lechmonic.
yeah. What was his name?
Lechmonic. Michael
Lechmonic.
Lechmonic.
Yeah, I heard that years later. I didn't.
Yeah, he was 11 years old.
When was that? That was the 30s?
1930.
Was it 19? I see. I remember.
My
that.
father remembered that.
I remember them talking about it.
Oh yeah, you probably would. Yeah. There was a Johnson boy there. He didn't die, but they had to revive him.
Oh, dear,
His
Johnson
eyes
was
were
about
bad
it.
the rest of his life. My father said because of it.
I think his father was a brother to Cal Johnson's.
Okay.
Yeah, I seen the Johnsons over in the cemetery. I was over there looking at some of the graves and
East German?
over here in the German cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
The whole Johnson family.
Oh, yeah.
both
Lots of
sides.
families are all.
I was trying to find the picture. My sister was going over all the pictures of the family,
Oh, I saw a couple on
and she had
Facebook.
pictures of my grandmother and grandfather when they were dating. And I said I don't remember my grandmother except for her being short and fat and gray hair.
Yeah, that would be your father's
Lena.
mother?
Yeah,
Oh,
Lena.
Lena.
Lena
I was thinking of
James.
her mother, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Lena would be your grandmother, yeah.
Yeah.
I have to check on these generations here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Lena,
I love
Margaret's
them
mother.
old
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
What?
That's I brought. In fact, I brought.
She more or less raised you, didn't she?
What's that?
Lena raised you, didn't
Yeah. Yeah, I lived
Your
with them.
brother, yeah.
I lived with them my whole life.
Yeah, exactly.
So from the time I was 6 months old, I moved here and been
They
there ever
said your
since.
father was one of the brightest guys graduated from German high school.
And he was a valedictorian. They said he was really smart.
Well, yeah, I didn't know him in school. He was
Yeah.
You remember that picture?
Well, where's that? Who's in that, Margaret?
That's a German high school, but I don't know who's in it.
You don't know what year?
What year?
I think it was when my brother was a kid, so I would
Yeah.
say it would have been in the late 50s or maybe early 60s. I don't know. My grandmother had a lot of these. Did you know the Tucker family?
Yeah, they were related. They were related.
Yeah, my
Clayton Tucker's.
My grandmother was a Tucker,
That was it. Yeah.
and that's Charles Tucker, and
Oh, okay.
those are the Tuckers there.
Remember Betty?
Clayton had her brother. No, Betty was Clayton's wife,
Yeah,
but they had a brother.
Clyde. Clyde. There was Clyde Wilson.
Oh no.
That was the Wilson part of the family.
Yeah, that was half the town. So he was
Yeah, half-
smaller combs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was raised Art Wilson, you
Yeah.
know, my grandfather and Grace Johnson, they were brother and sister, and Art Wilson's mother,
Yeah,
I saw the picture.
Art's
of
mother
Art
was a
with
smaller
your-
car.
yeah,
Art's
Art.
mother, and then Clyde Wilson's wife was Florence Wilson, was Grace Johnson was a smaller comb.
Graceful, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
And,
Her mother,
and
well,
Lottie-
Grace's mother, let's see, no, Grace was a smaller cone, right? She
Yeah.
was sister to Jean.
Yeah.
And Paul.
Yeah, and I thought I had some. In fact, I was going to have you scan some of the pictures, and I got pictures of me and my brother when we were kids, and
I remember you when you were kids.
I was going to leave some of these to scan and go over some of them. And this is my brother when he graduated high school.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Now, who's the oldest, you?
Oh, my
yeah.
brother.
Well, he was older,
He
wasn't
was
he?
2 years older.
I
Yeah.
knew you were close.
And you have what, two sisters?
One sister.
Well, half-sister.
Yeah, half sister.
Where is she now?
And Archibald.
Is her mother still living? Or
My mother, no.
her mother?
Her mother's still
I
living.
think I put her dishwasher in for her.
Yeah, if you go up by
What's her first
Quinn's,
name?
Yeah.
where Quinn's Market is,
Yeah.
and you look up to the right, there's a great big white fence and a big house that's up on the
Up in
hill.
the
Yeah.
development up
Yeah,
there?
that's her house
Quinn's
there.
live up in that
Yeah.
area. Quinn's up there.
Yeah, somebody just built a big, gigantic house right next to them. And
Oh, yeah?
whoever it was said they were downsizing.
But did she get married again, or did
Yeah, well, my stepmother didn't get married, no.
That's what I wondered.
But my sister married Doug Cook from down in Peckville.
Oh, they the one that built the house?
So they built a house there in Archibald, and she's
I
the
lost track of them after.
yeah, I got pictures when we were little kids here, and
One, so you do, yeah.
you know, back when in the house behind the house in German, and
Oh, okay.
I got pictures of my grandmother here, my
Oh,
grandfather
gee.
here.
When you were in school, do you remember any teachers, any specific
Oh, no.
ones?
What?
Mrs.
Mrs. Mullen, well, she was Sullivan. No, she was Miss Sullivan when I had her, and she was Mrs. Mullen. She used to live over the language when I had her.
Who was the one that Mrs. Was it
Mary
Noble?
Ledoux.
The big lady?
Yeah.
Mrs. Noble,
Grace
yeah, I had her in
Noble.
8th grade, yeah.
I think
Grace
Irene
Noble.
Kaufman said that the boys took onion or garlic, they put it in the heating system,
Oh, yeah.
because they wanted to get out of class. And,
Yeah,
Yeah, we had her, and we had Mildred Martin. We had her for English. And Mary Martin. In 8th grade, we had Mary Martin, Mildred Martin, Mrs. Noble, and
there's 3 generations there. That's my father, my grandfather, and me and my brother.
Do you have many of your classmates still alive?
the only 2 boys is John Koschak and me. Did you know John
From your,
Koschak?
no, from your class?
Yeah, in fact, Mary Allen called me, well, Mary's nephew, Martha's son called me that long ago. She said, Charlie, Mary called, she wants you to get a hold of you. We're going to want to have a reunion. 70 years ago this year. So I called Mary, and I looked through I didn't have a picture of the class, I mean, I probably had it somewhere, but I had a picture of her 40th reunion and her 50th. And I went through there, and there was only about 60. But there were a couple others that weren't there, and I found
Yeah.
out that, you know. But I said, Mary, I said, gee, there's not enough of us could even make a reunion.
Oh.
But it was nice talking to her. She left here after she was valedictorian in the class, and she left here after she graduated, went to Penn State, met a guy who lived in Ohio, and now she's down in North Carolina.
Yeah. Wow.
But she was in for her 60s.
Yeah.
Well, you had a 40s, and then they had 3 in a row. The joints were all there.
Yeah, my
My
father went to
father
one of those.
probably went there, yeah.
And he said he was sitting there with his walker, and Leo was out there dancing every dance. My father was.
Yeah, Leo, and there's a painter in the car dealer. Frankie painted our house when we were married.
Yeah.
And there were 3 real old guys there.
He was from the class of 24, Leo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably my father. Well, they had a 3-year class when he graduated. I think he graduated in
My father was class of 41, I think.
really? Well, 1940.
And you were 48, you said, right?
Yeah,
7
he
years
was,
ago.
yeah, I remember your
Yeah.
father in school.
My father was 39.
I used to tell Irene Coffin, she goes to our church, you know,
Yeah.
our 90th birthday, they announced it. She didn't announce the year. I said, Irene, I know how old you are because I know how old I am. She was
Somebody
3 years.
always
She was
knows.
3. She was 3 years ahead of me in school.
Right.
Nikki was 4 years ahead of me. Nikki's 92. We had an investment club. And Ricky Pigeon died, then we sort of broke up. Stanley Hollowich was in it for a long time. He said, "Why'd you break up?" I said, "Well, look at this one. Nikki's 90. I think of that. Nikki was 91. Basil was 90. I'm 87. Where are we going?" But Basil's still sharp. You know, Basil, he's really sharp. He had a tough time between his kid and
Yeah.
wife.
Wife, yeah. Yeah, he used to bowl. He used to come up to bowling alley all the time, even after he quit bowling.
Did he?
He'd bring his son up.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know.
His son was up in the nursing home, and I used to. A couple times I asked him about him, you know, and he'd break up right away. So I never asked him.
Yeah.
I see him every once in a while.
Well, anything else you can think
Do
of?
you have anything you want to add about growing up in Germany?
No, I mean, that's what we.
Alice, you got any questions? And Bruce,
We had a
anyone?
couple good basketball teams in the early 40s. It was from Susie Austin, Joe
I
Austin.
remember that name.
He
Yeah.
was great.
Do you remember Turpak, the weightlifter?
Oh yeah,
Mayfield.
Mayfield,
Father told me about
yeah.
him.
He was out down in York. He started the York
Marble.
Barber. Yeah, yeah, I knew him.
Yeah, that's all I can think of.
Yeah, that's all you have. We want to thank you.
You remember Ray Bell? When he, not the Ray Bell that was around your age, but
No,
his
his
father.
father was a mailman.
He painted.
Oh, well, I've got two pictures that he painted. He was a great artist.
Yeah, he painted that one and that one.
Yeah, I got one up there. At the bottom of Finch Hill. Elk Mountain was in the distance, and there's a barn there. And another barn.
And he used to paint it in what is now my kitchen.
Yeah, he was a great artist. He was really, and he was the mailman in town. They had two. I always say that they had 2 deliveries in town a day, and he was the only mailman.
Yeah.
He walked and no car. He walked
Did
it
they
off
have 2 deliveries?
twice a
Yeah,
day. He'd walk
twice a
all
day.
over town.
Yeah.
And he was always in bad health.
6 days a week, too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He was always in bad health too, as long as I
There
knew.
was
And
some-
Suzanne Fisher wrote about him in that
Sue
book
Fisher,
that
oh
she
yeah,
wrote.
I got that.
The
I went to
Green
she
Dot.
had something up
Yeah.
at the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew them growing up too.
Yeah.
They grew up in the alleyway there behind.
Yeah. Susie, Karen, both the boys are gonna,
Huh?
Bobby and Charlie are both,
Charlie got killed in the car
yeah,
accident.
long time ago.
I remember his father when after
I remember
he saw what
Charlie.
the accident was. He said, "Gee," he said, "I walked away from better accidents, worse accidents."
Yeah. Well, that's what they said. Everybody said they don't understand how he got killed
No.
because it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that serious. I mean, it just happened. Hit him the wrong way. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Charlie. We were kids. He was older than me, but
Yeah, I think he was the old. They had 4 kids, 2 girls and a boy.
And Bobby was the oldest. Bobby just
No,
died
Charlie,
not
I
that long
thought
ago.
Charlie was
No, Charlie
Charlie.
was the younger one.
Oh, Bobby was the one that was
Bobby
killed
was-
then, yeah.
No,
Was
Charlie was the
No,
one that
Charlie
was
was the
killed
one
in
that was
the
killed.
That's
accident
what
when
I
he
saw,
was a
but I
kid.
thought the older
Bobby, the older
I
one,
remember
was
him,
married
yeah.
to Lynn Seymour.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He
Okay.
just died a year or so
Oh, did he?
ago. Yeah.
Where did they live?
I'm not sure.
was Charlie in
I
the
think-
car by himself, or was he in
No,
the
he
car
was
with
can't-
Dave
I
Hodge?
think you. Huh?
Was he in the car with Dave Hodge?
No.
Somebody
No, I
said
don't
Dave.
think
There was an accident. I remember with Dave Hodge involved.
Was
in
that with Jerry Durst?
Jerry Durst?
Oh,
That's what it
was he in the car when Jerry
Durst,
died?
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, he was driving, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember there was a fire at church,
They hit
school fire in Jessup, and they got the
He
call.
hit the bridge, wasn't it? On the
Yeah,
turn?
coming around the turn.
Turn,
there.
yeah.
That was the night of Donnie Cerace's bachelor party.
What was it?
And he went up.
Was he there?
Yeah. and they went up to see, they had the girl singer up at the Mountain View.
Yeah, that's when they
Jerry
came out of
really
there,
liked,
they
and
said.
he wanted to go up and hear her
That's when they
sing.
said, yeah.
And he was engaged to that Anderson girl at that time. Beverly Anderson, she was from Youngmore. She was a cousin to Chura, to Danica Chura.
Yeah, I knew her.
Yeah.
Well, she was a Levito, I think. She was a sister to Danny's
Yeah, might have been
mother.
on that side of the
Yeah.
family, yeah.
I can remember all back, but don't ask what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So somebody I can remember who I married 50 years ago. I don't remember who I married last week. That short-term memory goes when you
Yeah,
get older.
that's the way my Aunt Margaret was. She could tell you what happened when she was a kid,
Yeah.
and she couldn't remember what she had for breakfast.
Donnie Yergowski's that way now.
Yeah.
I had dinner with him tonight. Alexander, every once in a while. But he'll ask me a question, I'll give him the answer. A couple minutes later, he'll ask me the same question.
Yeah.
But if you go back there in the Centennial, back when we were in the Lions Club, he knows everything.
I was in the funeral home this week, and he came walking in, and he walked right by me. He didn't know who I was.
He probably, yeah.
Didn't know who I was.
Well, that happens to me a lot, though. I met a lady, she's probably about your age, on in Walmart the other night, and she was talking to me, and I didn't know who, I didn't ask her. Then she told me her husband is Bob, her husband, is active in one of the fire companies. He keeps him good. And I still to this day, I don't know what she was.
Donnie gave me my first job. I used to work in Don's Market.
Well, that's when I remember Willie Schuster lived where,
Oh, yeah,
where
my
your
son
father
lives,
got
yeah.
the house out.
Yeah. my
But
son
they used to
lives
say
there.
in those days, you weren't supposed to eat eggs, right? So Roger Hickok would leave 3 dozen eggs off a week, and Lotney had the store there then. You go over to Lotney's and get another dozen. He eats 4 dozen eggs a week. Finally cut up on him, he died at 97.
Oh, Mr. Schuster, he was a character.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, yeah. He made his own false teeth.
Did he?
Yeah, but he didn't wear them very often because he made them out of lead.
Out of what?
Lead.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember it.
He came down when we lived in Mary Kennedy's house.
Yeah.
When my son Michael was born, and
Yeah.
he came down, and it was snowing, and he walked with the cane and everything. He said, "I'm nothing to that baby, but I'm going to be his Uncle Schuster."
Uncle Schuster.
Yeah, nice man.
He
And
lived
pictures,
there- he lived
pictures
there
of his
every-
96th birthday party.
Yeah, I said I think he was 97 when he was there.
Yeah,
But he lived there as long as I could remember. It was such a-
yeah. He died right after my Bobby was born, and my Bobby lives in that house now.
Yeah, I know your son lives there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, well, it was
Thank
good
you.
reminiscing and glad you got a little
Yeah.
information.
Oh,
Appreciate you
Anyway,
coming
enjoyed
over.
it very much.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
We'll
Really
keep
nice.
this forever, and if your family wants
Well, I
copies
don't know
of
whether
it,
I want you to keep it.
if your family wants copies of it, we'll have
Oh,
it.
yeah, okay, maybe they will.
Yeah.
I'll